Hi, everybody. This is Ryan Uri, and I lead our meat and livestock group for S&P Global Commodity Insights. Today, I'm joined by Max Boratoglo, who leads our seafood analyst desk for S&P Global Commodity Insights. And today, we just want to bring to you our 2025 global seafood outlook. Max, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
So I guess why don't we go ahead and get started, and we'll kind of work through the species, kind of talk about where we finished 2024 and what our outlooks are for 2025. So let's start with one of the largest traded commodities across the globe, salmon. Do you want to talk us through both the aquaculture as well as the wild caught space as it relates to the salmon trade? And where we finished 24 and where we're set to head for 25.
Sure, of course, Ryan. So salmon aquaculture production is primarily dominated by two countries, Norway and Chile, which account for approximately 75% of global salmon trade. So in 2024, Norway kind of had a tale of two halves. In the first half, both production and exports were down about 4% relative to 2023. A lot of that was due to biological challenges such as sea lice. In the second half of 2024, Norway set records for both production and exports, and we're now expecting their 2024 annual production and exports to reach new records. As we look to 2025 for Norway, we expect production to break another record, surpassing 1.63 million metric tons, and exports to surpass 1.33 million metric tons. And because of this, we're forecasting that salmon export prices from Norway will decline by about 1.7%. Looking towards Chile, Chile had a pretty difficult year in terms of production. We're expecting 2024 production to finish the year down 7% relative to 2023. Export levels haven't been affected too significantly, as Chile has exported a higher percentage of their total harvests. As we look to 2025, we don't expect a strong recovery from Chile from a production standpoint. We expect it to stay flat around 715,000 metric tons. But we're anticipating that export levels and prices will remain about as what they were in 2024. Then kind of looking towards the wild caught market, it was a lot more bearish relative to the farm salmon market. The Alaska commercial salmon fishery reported a 56% decline in volume this year. And when we look at Russia and the US combined, we're expecting 2024 to be the lowest wild caught landings in over 40 years. So 2025, we should see some improvement, particularly due to pink salmon having sort of alternating between high and low harvest seasons every other year. So 2025 will be a higher harvest season. But still, the trend is that salmon is increasingly becoming a more and more farmed market.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough outlook for the wild caught space, but looking at aquaculture, it seems to have certainly filled in some of the gap that the global demand might have demanded out of this overall supply. So, Max, why don't we go ahead and turn to shrimp now? Why don't you take us through kind of what we expect 24 to end up as, and then where we will be heading come 25?
Yeah, of course. So 2024 was a really volatile year for the shrimp market. In the US, we saw the ongoing anti-dumping and countervailing duties investigations which were on Ecuador, India, Indonesia, and Vietnamese shrimp imports into the United States. Sort of during this interim period, before the final decision, which was made in October, we saw U.S. imports of frozen shrimp drop about 10%. In October, where now we no longer have as significant duties placed on imports from those four countries. We've seen shrimp imports in the US sort of stabilize relative to 2023 levels, but we're still down compared to 2022 and 2021 levels. Another big story in 2024 was the drop in Chinese imports. China's the largest importer of shrimp, of frozen shrimp, globally. And so far in 2024 through October, shrimp imports have been down about 11%. And a lot of that is due to sort of macroeconomic challenges in China, which is hurting consumer confidence. As we look to 2025, I wouldn't expect too much more stability. We obviously have seen prices over the last couple of years remain really low, but the potential impact of tariffs from the United States, at least in the United States market, will likely push prices upward into 2025. We expect Chinese demand to improve as the economy and consumer confidence improves in 2025, but there's still the long-term question of how China, who's the largest importer of shrimp globally and is now also the largest producer of shrimp globally, how long their import demand will be sustained.
Yeah, very good. No, I appreciate the outlook on the shrimp side of things. So let's kind of round this out and look towards whitefish or groundfish. What's the overall outlook there for cod and haddock and any of the other species that fall into that category?
Yeah, so whitefish kind of fits a similar story, which with what we're seeing with salmon in terms of the wild caught and farm dynamics. The big stories are kind of the wild caught anticipated declines in 2025. The Barents Sea, which is the primary region for cod landings, introduced a 25% reduction in its quota, which brings the cod quota down to 350,000 metric tons into 2025. And this is the fourth consecutive year of quota decreases in the Barents Sea. We forecasted Norwegian cod prices to rise by about 16% in 2025 as a result. And the other main supplier of cod, Russia, is also expected to see about a 30% year-over-year drop in Atlantic cod supplies. In terms of sort of wild caught alternatives, the outlook isn't too much better. Global haddock supplies are expected to drop by about 9% year-over-year in 2025, and safe by about 6%. When we look at the farm sector, Pangasius and tilapia have a much more bullish outlook. Pangasius is expected to grow by about 5.6% in 2025 to reach 4.5 million metric tons, while tilapia is expected to grow by about 4.5% and exceed 7 million metric tons. In terms of sort of US demand for aquaculture, the US is a big importer of swai fillets and tilapia fillets. In 2024, we've seen imports of swai outpace imports of tilapia, which sort of breaks with the historical trend. And we sort of expect in 2025 more of the same, especially as China will probably face substantial tariffs heading into 2025.
Very good. So yeah, so I guess the big question that everybody's focused on, at least from a U.S. perspective, but then even more on a global perspective, a lot of our seafood sector is globally traded. And with the new administration coming in January, lots of talks of tariffs. Any thoughts around tariff implications across the seafood sector and what we might see? Obviously, still too early to tell, but there's likely some signposts to watch, as well as some potential implications that we should be aware of heading into 2025.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the US is the largest importer of seafood by value. In 2023, we imported 25.8 billion dollars worth of seafood. And the market's primarily driven by higher value species, with shrimp, salmon, lobster, and crab accounting for over 60% of the total import value. When we look at those species in particular from an import perspective, that's kind of what I'm focusing on to see the effects of tariffs, specifically because 80% of lobster imports, 48% of crab imports originate from Canada. We're expected to potentially see a 25% tariff on imports into the United States, or imports from the United States. And then additionally, in the case of salmon, 15% of imports come from Canada and China. Specifically, Canada imports or exports a lot of whole Atlantic salmon, while China exports a lot of Atlantic salmon fillets to the United States. From the export side, we're still kind of focusing on those same species, as 60% of our salmon exports are sent to China or Canada, 70% of our lobster exports, and 80% of our crab exports. So as we think about the potential sort of retaliatory trade measures that might be imposed as a result of tariffs, those species are specific or especially vulnerable. Ultimately, sort of the potential impact will be on the entire US seafood industry is likely to be substantial. There's a lot of complexity, obviously, given the array of commodities and intricate relationships that we have with trading partners. But the effects obviously won't be uniform across the sector, but it does seem clear that these potential tariffs are going to lead to higher prices for consumers and a reduction in overall trade.
Very good. Well, yeah, thanks for that recap, Max. Well, for those of you guys that are not aware, we do cover seafood in depth on a monthly basis across all of our species. So we appreciate you guys joining us today as we walk through our 2025 seafood and aquaculture outlook. And very much appreciate the time, Max, and look forward to the next time around.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.